Hello my friends, my name is Ben and this is another video in the MGN Destiny series Enemies Explained, where I strip away the hitboxes and reveal the greater story, characteristics, and names behind the enemies you kill by the hundreds day in and day out. In this video I'll be looking at the fallen House of Judgement. Now so far we've been looking at traditional houses, you know, the ones with the Kells, the Archons, the Barons, the Prime Servitors. Same in, same out. I covered a lot of that general information in the House of Devils, and then in every video afterwards I kind of made just a short reference to that, saying, yeah, if you want that general overarching information, just check out that first video. For the first time, we're not going to even need that because the House of Judgement is not a traditional house. They're traditional in the sense that they've been around for a long time, so I guess you could say that they are a well-established house, but they have a very unique role and a purpose in fallen society. So with that being said, let's just get into it. When you're looking at the identity and the origins of the House of Judgement, it's important to know that as far as we know, they, alongside the House of Kings, are one of the oldest known fallen houses. Way back when, probably even before their golden age, the House of Judgement and the House of Kings, they fought beside each other in order to unite all of the houses under one banner, presumably anyway. As Varix, actually I used a quote from Varix in the House of Kings video. Presumably, the House of Kings, under this new, I guess, you know, one nation, Elixir, whatever, the House of Kings would lead, they were the kings, and the role of House Judgement was to keep the peace. I'm going to now use a quote from an ancient Elixir pack, and this pretty much sums up what the role and the purpose was for House Judgement. The House of Judgement shall have no catch, but live among the other houses to guide the Kells and keep their secrets. So what does this mean? Well, the members of the House of Judgement, they were split amongst the other houses, and they would act as guides or advisors to their Kells. The singular goal of this house was to keep the peace, like I said, between the other houses, and this was in order to keep the Elixir people strong. Remember, the House of Judgement and the House of Kings fought a war to make this unification happen, so it was really in House Judgment's best interest to do whatever they could to keep this peace. After the whirlwind or the fallen collapse happened, the House of Judgement, their survivors anyway, along with the other known houses that survived the whirlwind, would follow the fleeing traveler to our system, and as far as we currently know, House Judgement is only known to have settled in the Reef with the House of Wolves. Like I said, the members of the House of Judgement were split amongst the other houses, but apart from Varix, like I'll get into in a minute, we don't know of anybody else in that house. So why is that a thing? Well, as far as we know, for the longest time, Varix the Loyal has been the only known surviving member of House Judgement. We don't know why this was the case, why he's the last one left. We don't know when this happened. We don't even know how it happened. All we know is that he is the last one left. He's also one of the oldest fallen that we know of, along with Krask, the House of Kings Kell. He's been alive since before the Whirlwind, so he's been alive for hundreds and hundreds of years. Again, similar to the rest of the House of Judgement members, his goal has always been to see the fallen houses unite as one people. Now, since Varix is the only surviving member of the House of Judgement, and the only member of that house, the majority, if not all, of this video is going to be about him and his story. So, let's just continue on. Well, he was with the House of Wolves. Like I said, the House of Wolves, they settled in the Reef, and so presumably Varix was with them in the Reef as well. It's unknown if the House of Wolves fought at the Battle of Six Fronts. I've said this so many times, it's never specifically stated which houses were at that battle. But like I mentioned in my House of Wolves article, they never fought in the Battle of Twilight Gap. It is estimated that when the Queen of the Awoken ambushed the House of Wolves before they could leave the Reef, that the Harbingers destroyed around half of the entire house. This is a couple 100,000 fallen. Varix fortunately survived, but the Kell of the House of Wolves, Virixes, would not. 3 powerful fallen would fight to become the next Kell. I actually covered this in my House of Wolves video, and ultimately it would be Skolas who would succeed. Varix would dutifully serve him for a time, but however, as Skolas continued to fight and wage war against the Awoken, Varix actually claims in the House of Wolves DLC that he could not stomach the Kell's hate. That's pretty close to a quote, that's from my memory anyway. And in the end, he would betray the House of Wolves. Thanks to Varix, the Awoken would defeat the House of Wolves and capture their Kell Skolas. Varix, as the House of Judgement member of the Wolves, he would crown the Awoken Queen Marsov as the new Kell of the House of Wolves, and this would effectively put the majority of the House of Wolves under the Awoken's control for a time. And the Wolves would serve the Awoken, and Varix would then be known as Varix the Loyal. During his time with the Awoken, Varix would become the warden of the Awoken's prison, and this was called the Prison of Elders. Members of all enemy races were contained in this prison, so you had Vex, Cabal, Hive, you name it, but it did also hold an exceptionally large number of Fallen from a variety of houses. And as a result of this, Varix was hated by the other Fallen, and they saw him as a traitor for imprisoning their own people. However, in reality, he always wanted the best for his people, but he was very clever and smart about how he wanted to achieve his goals. When the Nine would eventually free Skolas during the House of Wolves DLC, and the House of Wolves turned against the Awoken, Varix would stay loyal to them. This was because of his disgust towards Skolas, and the fact that he did not see the direction the House of Wolves was going in as the correct path for the Fallen. House of Wolves were messing with Vex tech, they were violently taking over the other houses, and it just wasn't the way he wanted to see things done. Due to his knowledge of the Fallen, Varix would be a vital asset to the Awoken, and he would be partnered with the Queen's Wrath Petra Venge, and together they would help the Guardian to capture Skolas again. Eventually the Guardian would defeat Skolas and he would be captured, and Varix would place him in the Prison of Elders, and he would reside as, of course, the warden of the Prison of Elders as always. After the fall of the House of Devil Splicers, actually, wait, they're just the House of Devils, but they're kind of different. That doesn't really matter. I'm going to be covering them in the next video. After the fall of the Devil Splicers, anyway, this was in the Rise of Iron DLC, Varix would begin looking for the last remaining Kell, and this was Krosk, the Kell of Kings. Varix believed that Krosk was the best chance the Fallen had for survival and wanted to work with him. Now, why is that the case? Well, like I said at the very start, the House of Judgement is one of, if not the oldest house that we know of. And apart from keeping the peace, another thing that the House of Judgement is really needed for is keeping the traditions. Remember, these guys are scribes, so you look at them as historians. They remember the old ways and the way things are done. And at this current time, after the House of Devils were officially just done when the Splicers were defeated, Krosk and the House of Kings, they were the last traditional house. And so to Varix, this last traditional house is the only chance that the Fallen have for uniting and keeping the identity that they currently have. So that is just kind of motivation for why he was looking into the House of Kings when he did. So Varix believes that Krosk was the best chance the Fallen had, but unfortunately, and I mentioned this in my House of Kings video, Krosk would be betrayed and killed by the Awoken Prince Uldren Sov and his Scorn Barons. The death of Krosk, of course, it would thwart any of Varix's plans, and it would also result in the gradual decay of the House of Dusk. In time, however, Varix would hear of a large number of Fallen settling on Europa, and this would be under the leadership of Aramis. Aramis being, I'm going to get into that in my House Salvation video, but she was a House of Devil ship stealer. In order to escape the Reef, remember I don't think the Awoken would have let him just leave, and he wanted to join Aramis, Varix needed to create a distraction, so what he did, as the warden of the Prison of Elders, he released all the prisoners, and this created chaos and provided the perfect distraction for him to escape. However, when he released all the prisoners, this would include Uldren and the Scorn, and their release would result in the death of the Hunter Vanguard Cade 6. This was never the intention of Varix, and he would be haunted by this, and eventually be hunted by the Vanguard as a result of it. After leaving the Reef, Varix would go to Europa and he would join Aramis, but he would eventually see this as a really big mistake, because sometime after the Fallen had settled on Europa, the Pyramid Fleet, again during the Season of Arrivals, in Destiny 2, the Pyramid Fleet would enter our system, and one of the ships would land on Europa's surface. Aramis would be seduced by the whispers and the promises that came from those within the pyramid. By the way, check out my channel if you want to know more about the pyramids. And thanks to the work of Praxis, this was the technocrat. I can't remember what his. I'm sorry, Beyond Light's just not good. And thanks to the work of Praxis, Aramis and her Fallen would use the technology and the information stolen from the Clovis Bright facility on Europa, and they would use the technology to artificially wield stasis, which was a, I guess you could call it a darkness power. I don't know. They never really explained it. That's not my fault. Aramis would be drastically changed by the pyramid in terms of her personality and the way she acted, and eventually, just like with Skolas, Varrox would see her as not a leader worth following anymore. He would send a distress signal to the city, and the city would then send the Guardian, or the player character, and they would eventually assist and help Varrox in taking down Aramis and the House of Salvation on Europa. After the House of Salvation was pretty much crippled, Varrox would make his new goal helping any Fallen on Europa who wanted it to leave Europa and travel to Earth in order to join the new House of Light that was situated there. And as a result of that, it is safe to assume that Varrox is allies with Mithrax, who is the Kell of Light. Again, I'll be making a video entirely on the House of Light, so stay tuned for that. This brings us to the conclusion. If you have watched any of my previous videos, or if you've read any of my previous articles on the MGN Destiny 2 website, you will kind of be aware of the pattern. Every time we get to the end of a video or an article, it's like, okay, well, this house doesn't exist anymore, this is how they were destroyed, and that is not the case for the House of Judgement. They still exist, Varrox is still alive, and his goal is still the same. He still sees himself as a scribe. He specifically states in Beyond Light, as a vendor, never underestimate a scribe. And he is again still pursuing the goal of uniting all of the houses. Once everything on Europa is done, it's kind of expected, and it's kind of part of the deal that was arranged at the start of Beyond Light, that Varrox will be brought before the Vanguard to answer for the death of Cayde 6. Now, he stated that he would cooperate with this, and he stated that he was haunted by Cayde 6's death, but whether or not he actually, you know, goes along with the plan and he doesn't ditch everybody and escape, that's a different story entirely. That's for the most part the majority of the information that you need to know about the House of Judgement. If you want to know more about the other fallen houses or the other enemy races of Destiny in general, feel free to check out the other videos and articles on the MGN Destiny 2 website and the YouTube channel. If there's anything specific that you want to know more about, leave a comment and I will be sure to work on it for you. I probably should have stated this in my other videos and blogs, but yeah, if you guys actually want something, if you, Mr. Jerry or whatever your name is, if you're watching this or you're reading this and if there's something specific that you have a question about, leave a comment and I will either make a video on that in the future, or if it's something small enough, I can literally just respond to your comment and answer your question directly. My name is Ben, my YouTube channel is Venextron, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas, and in these trying times, I hope that everyone has a safe new year. Take care.